college. It's a Catholic academy. It's a tough area of Birmingham. It's been an academy 3.5 years. Some people here come to see it, or will come to see it. And we have this year used action research as a means of CPD. So what that means is we haven't had 3 inset days. We've had a staff speaker come in, and we've all sat in the theatre writing stuff down. We have done other things. And the other thing is what I'm going to explain, hopefully clearly, to you and explain what we've done. If it's of interest, learn how to use this thing now. This man is one of my bosses. It's a very nice man, actually. Hopefully he'll be a head teacher by the end of next week. He's Darren Turner. And rather than listen to this video, you can show, but the basic thing about this is that the vice principal, him, and the principal want to do research as a means of CPD in the school. They want it to happen. And he goes on for 5 minutes to explain the benefits of that. And one of the great analogies that Darren talks about is if you want to do, as we can see down here, next door I think it's an MPQH course, this type of process is the type of process you need in order to produce work to get your accreditation for these particular courses. So the reason why they want to do it is to change and almost improve the staff's thinking about their professional responsibilities, but their professional approach. Okay, now that's not necessarily easy, as I'll explain to you, because we're going to play lucky dip with the evaluations from Christmas, so we'll see that some of them aren't happy, but they're all here. So that's him. He does believe in it, and he's been very good, and he's supported it. So off we go. So these are hopefully the things I'm going to talk about. If you have any questions, I'll answer them at the end, or as we're all nice and group, you will be very polite, I'll answer them as we go along. So, there's Darren. He wants it to be used, the head teacher wants it to be used. We want to become a research school, or a school where research is to be done as part of professional practice. That's a better solution. And the key thing is this: we've tried it 2 years running before, and it's botched. I wouldn't say that to him or to the head teacher. It hasn't worked. And one of the reasons it hasn't worked is perhaps the staff weren't ready for it, and perhaps it wasn't very well explained. And the approach that we took was a bit bolder, because it wasn't necessarily my idea. But previously, we'd chosen the groups and we'd chosen the theme and said, choose your own question, but the question might look like that, which is not very, not very good. And consequently, in the scheme of a busy school, it fell by the wayside. Whereas this time, we've made sure it hasn't. Which is one of the things I've had to persuade is the staff who fallen by the wayside before thought that this was going to fall by the wayside, and my job is to constantly smile. Some of you will know that that's not my fault. Not to shout at them, not my forte, and to encourage them to keep working, because this thing is going to happen. So what did I do? So in terms of support, okay, one of the things I pride myself on is stealing other people's ideas. So I apologise now if your ideas are being presented as mine. I'm quite happy to give over other ideas. So I went to this particular event, which we'll cover more of at the end, to basically listen to a few people to how it might actually happen in school. So that's the focus I went with. And I spoke to some very nice people, some of which I've been speaking to before anyway. And these are the people I'm speaking to. Also, I know Glenn, because she's very nice, and she's helped me. But these two people are the people I listen to the most. Now, Carol Davenport, she works up in York, and she works at York University as she's actually a science. She's to do with science PGC education, but she uses a lot of action research in her work, and she made a presentation then all about carrying it out in the classroom and about the work that she would like her students to carry out as part of their studies. David Weston, you might know. Interestingly enough, I did email him a couple of years ago while he was starting off his Teaching Development Trust about this idea of action research and the ideas that he has. Now it's taken off a bit now. It's quite, it's an organisation with gravitas, let's say. But the top two people are people who, once we've got started, have been willing to share their ideas about the work that we've done. So when I show you some of the work that we've done, they've looked at it and said, yeah, you can improve it by changing this question or look at it. So I'm not saying that they might do that suddenly for 25 people. I'm saying that, when I use these events to make contact with people, so the person next door I've spoken to make sure that the next event I'm running, he will do something for me. But these people have been proven to be very useful. So I use their ideas, and if we were the staff, and I got my son on the way down, he loves this thing. He gets some money to go to London. So he's gone off, but he's put the, and if you want to, I've got some posters and stuff like that, but I'd quite happily share them. You can just email me at the end. So this is what they got. They got an A3 version of this. And I thought I could show you the Prezi that I did, but I'm not going to insult your intelligence. You can have that. And we went through what we were expecting people to do. Now, they've never done it before, or some people have never done it before. So we, in a series of twilight sessions, we focused probably in this thing and this thing as soon as I introduced the concept. Because Carol told me the hardest thing is making sure that the question is measurable and the question is achievable. And because people planning, you sat people down, and to be honest, after not being interested for 2 years, suddenly they have grandiose plans all over the place. And they really needed to nail down those questions. Now, if I can show you what the questions were when we got to it. That's not it. Okay, now, these are some of the questions. Now, they're quite, this is the first time they've ever done it. So they wrote these questions down. So we used Google Docs to track what they were doing. And some of these questions went by the wayside, they got refined, but those are the type of things that they came up with. But those were the projects that started. So this is in September. Now some of those are quite interesting. Some of the work that was produced was actually very good. We'll come to that. So back to this. So the first session, they came up with the question. The next one, they planned what they were going to do. Now, the hardest thing we've had to try to do is persuade them. One, they've got to be able to make time, because now I've had to each time try to persuade them, not explicitly like I'm talking to you now, but this is something that was going to happen, and they needed to see this as part of their professional time. Lots saw it as an extra add-on that they either voted coming into or out of. And I think when Rachel was talking about, here's the Twitter world, and this is like real education. This might be an idea that some of you are interested in, but to most teachers, they either took it or they didn't, and they turn up for work and they go home. But this is part of the thing that we wanted them to change. We tried to change their thinking to this. And by the time we got plans off them of what they were going to do, we then set a couple of deadlines and to make sure that it was real. And the first deadline was that in the middle of November they were going to do, I suppose, ended up being an internal teaching. So they stood up and they did a 2-minute summary of what they were going to do in front of the whole staff. Now that suddenly makes things a bit real, because previously they didn't think it was going to happen. But it did. And that...
But people were okay with that, presenting to the whole staff?
Not everybody. We're coming to the fact that some people didn't want to, and some people, as the Lens raised it, like any group work, I mean, there's a great picture I keep seeing prior to this. It's got, the wolf pack striding through the Las Vegas hotel with various different categories. And then there are those people. I mean, I learned a great phrase earlier this week, social loafers in the group. People who do very little and say a lot. And then there are a few of those. And I must say, by the end of the first term, we did have a lot of people who felt that they'd done the majority of the work. That's why we'll get to phase 2 in a minute. And then we finished off with a proper... I have to go back to this one. So that was the Prezi that we did. That's the support material. The checks and balances is the fact that because they got up and spoke to us, and the head teacher's there because she wanted to have and the vice principal. And then we, okay, no, this is what we want. And finished up for Christmas, this happened. Now, this was quite an interesting and sea change event for the leadership group and for staff, because all groups bar one completed some work, so they presented. If we take out that some of the work wasn't maybe so, it wasn't earth-shattering, and some people here might know it, but let's face it, that you speak to lots of other people as a given. These people don't. What they found was that people actually worked quite hard on this, and some people produced really good work, and that took a lot of people by surprise, including the principal and the vice principal. And we had a range of different presentations that went on. So we had videos, poster presentations. One of them, which I would like to show you, this ladies group did really well. If you want any of these resources, I'll just send them all to you. So just because I thought I could give them out, but I'll just give them to you. Their question is really quite interesting and underpins the philosophy of our school. And what they wanted to do is look at attitudes of young people in the school and what they really wanted to do and understand why they're not doing it. So looking at their aspirations when they leave school and then working back about the things that's stopping them. Now, it's an actual research project, that's quite a big question. But now how that's developing now, for example, is that they're producing tutor group resources for all tutor groups to consider some big questions and consider their opinions towards that. And they're going to develop it. I can see that continuing on. It's a very successful little program. But so that's how one of them looked like. And if you can, they played the videos to the whole group, really. So that training day was every person gets standing up, and actually took longer than it should have done. And people were quite surprised by that. Now, Mr. Turner, the guy at the front, his original idea was he was actually going to hijack it. That's all he wanted to do, and he didn't really want to do, is that we had these 6 overarching drivers to improve the school. And I took this on the way out of school yesterday. And they talk about using technology, improving literacy, the types of things that we're all used to. And what he was going to do is, your question must be focused on one of those. It must be referenced to one of those. But to be honest, they all reference them anyway. So we feel the need to control it. And equally, because we'd had the issues that we just discussed, some groups weren't working, some people had had enough of their question, they wanted to reform. What we decided to do when we did it again in January, when we moved to phase 2, was that if they wanted to move, they could change the group and start a brand new question, or they could keep going with their own question and refine it and improve it. Okay, all the QR codes there are links to the Dropbox sort of resources that I stole off other people and said go and read that because it explains it really well. Now, out of that, the maths department took themselves away and they formed, and they're trying to look at something called rich tasks and how they work in school and what the benefits of they're going to be, and that's going to be their project to present in July. English department, again, are working on, I'll just tell you, because they changed the title on Thursday. So I'll just speak to my young friend here. It's an investment in whether or not teaching effective. Oh, wait a minute. This is from the head of English, so I can't actually read it. It's not actually said very well. It's an investigation into whether teaching effective discourse can impact improved literacy and oracy. And involved in that are all the development learning, the graduate coaches we have who work in the English department and the majority of the English staff. And they came up with that idea themselves, and they're going to research it, and they're going to present on that. And that's something that they feel will support the rest of us by giving us strategies use from September onwards. And then how we've supported that is I just talked about being there on